Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today on the podcast we have Zahra Karsan. Zahra, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing very well. So, Zahra, tell us a little bit about yourself. One of the things I thought was really fascinating about your information, your profile, whatnot, was that you are a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, speaker, certified coach, and you talk a lot about peak performance coaching. And I'd like to learn a little bit more about that and kind of what your approach to all this is.
Sure. Well, as you said, I've studied neuroscience, positive psychology, mindset coaching, and consulting. I was a management consultant for a year, so I really was all about mastering and a center of excellence. And so, being fascinated with human behavior and learning how to deliver amazing results and successful results every time became an interesting formula. And part of that job was always working with C-level executives and their management teams and trying to really get the best out of people. You're also trying to build strong performing, high performing teams and cohesive teams. And so you have to kind of be a student of human behavior and really what prevents us from operating in peak performance mode. And it really came down to the human factor, if we call it that. There's two main things I would say. The first is that it really comes down to the things that are causing us the greatest amount of stress and anxiety, and that's part of being human. And so the first thing is that we really evolved to be good at survival. And what that means is we're not really wired for happiness or success. We have this kind of formula. We think we're chasing goals, and that's what life is. But most people don't really understand that we're actually wired to play it safe. And so our very lives and the ones that we want to have are completely in conflict with what we think we're doing. And so, kind of unraveling that and giving people a roadmap to be able to figure out what's stopping them from performing at their highest levels is usually happening in the subconscious. And the second piece of that is that people don't really know themselves. If you ask people what's important to you, what are you passionate about, what makes you happy, what's your definition of success, most people can't even really answer that. And, this is especially true for entrepreneurs because you're on this wild ride as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, and unless you are surrounding yourself with people going through the same challenges, you're just going to be on this mental, emotional, up and down, upheaval constantly. So really tapping into who you are, why you're doing the thing you're doing is really important. Otherwise, how do you get up and do your 60-hour, 80-hour, 100-hour work week? Because, this 4-hour work day it's nobody gets successful in a day. There's 20 years of grinding before you become an overnight success, and all great entrepreneurs know that. Jeff Bezos, of Amazon started his company in some little office in some garage, and now it is this amazing thing, and he looks like, the pillar of success, but it was a long path to get there. And so if you help people really just uncover those two things, their performance just jumps, and that's individual and corporate. You can apply it to both, so it's really an interesting study.
Yeah, I think to kind of pull that together as to what I'm thinking on this topic is the idea that you got to kind of know yourself, know your limits, kind of what makes you happy or why. I think I completely agree with you. I don't know that going into this industry and going into the marketing industry, there was so much psychology behind it and really having this need to be able to read, to not only know yourself, but to read people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important to kind of spend time working on that and trying to develop that skill. So just like you're saying, not only for yourself to create, maintain, and cultivate that awareness about yourself and where your business is going and what your triggers are and what, where you push and pull and kind of how all that works.
Yes.
But to have the grace and understanding to know your clients are going through it too. So like for us, I mean, and we haven't really packaged this up, but for us, we're very relationship based as a company. So like we try to understand ourselves and we try to kind of stick to our plan and what the goal of Cyberdogz is and all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
But we also try to meet the clients where they're at and trying to be really patient and understanding and allow them some grace to kind of work through it too, because it's hard. You kind of mentioned it, but it's hard because if you're an entrepreneur and you go looking for information
Mm-hmm.
on starting a business and whatever, you're going to find all the Gary V's and the grit and the, like, you're going to find all the rah,
Yes.
you know, kind of collateral out there that's telling you how to do it, but not telling you how to do it.
Exactly.
It's not really explaining the long days. It's not really explaining the stress and the loneliness and the, like, all it's really talking about is this pull yourself up by your bootstrap kind of a thing, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but there's a lot more to that story.
Yeah.
And nobody really talks about that.
Yeah, that's the piece I became really with was, number one, like, the Grant Cardones and the Gary V's that have this, magical life for themselves. Like probably every video or every photo of Grant Cardone is on a private jet. So great, yeah, he's selling lifestyle and this big vision. And what separates, what small percentage of people allow themselves to even have a vision that big versus the rest of the population, which just sits back and gets up and goes to a job every day and lives this uninspiring life. And the reason there's this conflict is because I think there's something greater inside of us, and it's our soul, our spirit, our essence that knows we're meant for bigger things. And we're not really given a formula for how to do this. Like, as children, we're given a swim coach to learn how to be good at swimming and to learn the techniques and whatnot. If we're learning basketball or any other sport, for example, we have coaching for that. But life coaching became this flowery little thing that, there's a lot of unqualified people doing it, and it's a very dangerous thing. But if you actually go to somebody qualified in business coaching, and every successful entrepreneur has a team of coaches around them, where they can bounce ideas off, where they are taught to think critically and make the right decisions for their business of how to spend their time, their money, how to optimize performance, both personally and professionally. And so I became fascinated with, like, what is that formula that's stopping people from, that has people leave so much on the table, that stops them from really chasing after their goals. And as I started working with my clients, I was, as a coach, you have to get into their model of their world. And you have to understand, like, where did they construct these walls so I can figure out how to pull them down so that they can actually see more possibility in their life. And, and then the next step is developing and defining goals so that they can achieve their next stage of success. But as we went to had them visualize what that would look like and feel like for them, very few of them could actually tell me that achieving those goals would bring them any closer to happiness or a feeling of being successful in their life. And I thought, well, why on earth are you chasing these goals if it's not for you? Like, whose life are you living here? And so it dawned on me that most people don't actually know themselves well enough to know what's important to them, what is going to make them happy, what's going to light them up. And it's different for everyone. I mean, my diet's going to be different than your diet, Mike. You might like to have 10 egg whites in the morning. I might like to have, toast and something else. We are never going to order the same thing. We are never going to have the same workout. We are never going to have exactly the same energy throughout the day. So it's really a unique formula, and you have to tune in, and you have to be given the tools to figure out and define that for yourself. And that's what I tried to do when I wrote this book, 6 Weeks to Happy. It's really a step-by-step process for unraveling who you are, what lights you up, what is meant to, like really drive you, and what motivates you, and what are the things you're doing in your life that actually don't align with who you are. And so I developed two things. One is the book, and then I developed a personality quiz called the Life Block Quiz as well, which uncovers the unconscious patterns, that survival-based, that behavior that makes us safe. And it also uncovers your values, and your values are what's important to you. So, for example, it's like a playful, gamified way of figuring out what your personality is. So I did it kind of as a lead magnet, which is a marketing tool. And then it ended up just being so interesting and exciting with my clients that I turned it into a revenue stream itself, because it was so accurate, and the feedback we were getting was so amazing, because the starting point for all of this is self-awareness. If you know what the problem is, then you can work on it. If you know what the gap is, then you can fill that space between the life you want and the life you have now. And so you can actually really align, and it gives you all of the tools step by step on how to do that. And so the life block quiz actually, it takes about 10, 20 minutes, depending on how deep you get into it, but it's meant to elicit the subconscious patterns. It's meant to elicit like who you really are at your core. And so, for example, if you have an unconscious belief about not feeling good enough, how many people talk about imposter syndrome? Like every executive I have ever spoken to, every entrepreneur talks about this now. But it really comes from, a basis of basic beliefs in the unconscious. And so take the life block quiz and it pulls out, like, let's say you have this I'm not good enough, I'm alone in this world. And so what ends up happening, okay, so maybe you were left alone as a child, and this is how this story plays out. This is where the belief comes from. Well, you don't just end up becoming, a person that believes you're alone in this world. You then learn how to turn that into a strength. And then it becomes something that's important to you. So if you're alone in your life, you're either going to, try and figure out how to build community in your work, in your personal life, in your social life, or you're going to tell yourself and you're going to run this story, I'm alone. And so how it works negatively and positively is on the negative side, are you going to rely on your business partner? Are you going to rely and delegate? I have to do it myself, which is ultimately exhausting, and it's not a sustainable way to run a business. And then take that same belief and play it out in your personal life. It doesn't always sound like I'm alone, but if you get into a fight with your spouse or your partner or whatever, you run, I can do this on my own, I'm good. We really need to fill that gap. And once you fill that and bring some awareness to what's causing the stress, all of a sudden it starts to go away. All of a sudden you start to get the tools to be able to rely on your team and build stronger, high-performing teams in your business, for example. And so you have to figure out through this set of tools how to use it to your advantage and how to develop it in a healthy way. And that's when it can be really, really powerful for people.
Yeah. And since you mentioned it, I'm just going to throw this plug in there right now, and then I have a follow-up for you. The link to your book, 6 Weeks to Happy, I'm going to share that in the show notes when this episode goes live. And I'm also going to share a promo code where people can take the Life Block quiz at 20% off, and they can try that out as well.
Perfect.
So I just want to get that in there so I didn't forget. But my response to that is I completely agree with you, but my question, or what I'm thinking, is what I've seen in a lot of my clients, and I've gone through this myself, so I can at least speak for my own experience, but when people digest this concept of starting business, entrepreneur, whatever, when they start this journey, they're inundated with all the fluff and the motivation,
Yes.
Grant Cardone kind of stuff, and it's all good. It's all motivating, inspiring, great. The step that they skip, in my opinion, is they don't reverse engineer it as to, okay, that might be Grant Cardone's version, that might be this guy's version, but who am I? How am I going to get there? How is my life, my journey, my path different? It's not to say you can't do it. It's just they don't reflect back on what role they're going to play in that process. So that awareness it's non-existent. So like for them to even get there on their own, much less build a team that thinks like that, or to find clients that think like that, or whatever, because they've skipped that step for themselves, they're kind of unaware of even how to identify that in other people. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to achieve anything, you really need three parts. One is you need to conceive of it. You need to have a vision for something, whatever it is you're trying to achieve. The second piece of that is you need a plan. You need an actionable plan. You need to either get the skills, acquire the resources, the training, the experience in order to do it, or you need to find other people that have done it successfully and then model as they have, or adjust the model so it's something that you can achieve. And then three, you have to be able to take action. And I think what you're speaking to, Mike, is that most people don't have a really clear plan. Like I became a master of planning because I was a management consultant and I was delivering, $5 million to $50 million projects for big multinationals. And so learning how to master successful results was everything. I could do that now in my sleep. But this is the piece that a lot of entrepreneurs miss. They think, oh, because, so-and-so did it, that means I can do it. And there's so much noise out there when you're looking for a marketing company, when you're looking for a brand company, when you're looking for a social media company. They think, oh, if I just increase my followers and, I'll get an influencer, I'll be able to, sell 10x or whatever. But it doesn't work that way. And there's so much noise out there. And unless people can stand behind their deliverables and say, I'm going to bring this PR to you, and you don't pay me until I book you on these 10, and these are the metrics. Like, you need to be able to, as a business owner, ask for the metrics that people can stand behind. If they can't stand behind their product and put their money where their mouth is, don't them. So you have to be smart about how you use your vendors and how you go about it and how you go about planning it. Ask for those testimonials. Make sure you have all the data to make the right decisions. Otherwise, you're just going to throw money down the drain.
And I would agree that, like, whether it's a business coach or a marketing team or social media, whatever you're looking for, I would say that there's a lot of value in just somebody who can be honest with you about the journey.
Yes.
All the clients, I mean, they do. All the clients come looking for the, like, can you turn my $10 into 50? Mm-hmm. They need somebody to be honest with them and say, no, I can't. Maybe I can over 6 months, or maybe I can do that. Like, they need somebody who's going to be transparent with them so that they can meet them where they're at and they can begin that journey together. When there's that noise out there and you're fostering more noise based off the noise that brought them there, and like, everybody wants to jump to the finish line. Everybody wants to, like, I just want to jump to the private jet part because that's pretty cool. And it's like, it is pretty cool. But there's a lot of stuff that happens between now and then.
Oh my gosh, You're the CFO, you're the chief marketing officer, you're the chief of staff, you're the, head of operations, It's a lot to take on when you're starting a small business.
Yeah, and I just feel like we owe it to our clients to be realistic about it. Let's be honest, I'm in the position at times where I can blow smoke, I can make people empty promises, I can do all those things like everybody else does, but I have to live with it. Plus, I have to know that I'm running on borrowed time because eventually that blows up in my face. Yes. So I never do that, but I think more businesses should think like that because it's unfair to the client.
I agree with you.
Because they don't know what they don't know, and they're trusting us.
Yeah, absolutely. When you meet someone and they have an idea for a business, like, they just think this is real when it's so manufactured. And so, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into actually building a business and getting it off the ground is real. And so to have vendors like you're talking about, Mike, that actually say, if we're realistic, you're missing these pieces, and in order for this to be successful and to set yourself up for success, you're going to need A, B, and C. You're missing part of A, and you have some of C. So let's fill these gaps, and then that will give you the winning formula. But a lot of vendors will just say, I can do this for you, and I can bring you A, B, and C. But they're not really talking about what it takes to be successful. You need a unique selling proposition. You need to differentiate yourself in the market. We need all of those proper building blocks to have the right formula for business success these days. And it's changing so fast. Everything's changing at lightning speed now. You've got AI coming on board, you have ChatGPT, you have algorithms on social changing. So even how you run ads is going from video to podcast to all kinds of different ways to generate leads. And it's a wild, wild ride trying to launch a business right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what you were saying earlier, I think, is very foundational in the fact that, the mental health side of it, knowing yourself, the psychology of stress, business, entrepreneurship, all of that stuff. I think that's pivotal in how you start that journey off on the right foot.
Yes. And you have to be able to navigate. You have to be able to pivot and say, okay, I think we live in a generation where you can't just have one idea, one career either. You've got to have multiple ideas. And so you have to detach from the idea. If you have a realistic plan, you can say, okay, here's my decision point. It's not taking off. I had, 3 trial runs on ad campaigns. It's not taking off. So either the product's not sales or strategy's not right. And then you have to be able to pivot and say, okay, if this doesn't work, what other ideas do I have that could take off? Or you need to pivot in terms of how to sell because the marketplace is changing so much these days. So maybe, you focused on one product versus a whole product line and you get that selling, and that it's a completely different formula. But I think you have to be agile, and if you can do it, that's a starting point. But, having the right tools to be able to measure success or failure and turn the game, that's what you need to know as well. That would be really helpful for people.
Yeah, and I think having resources and or somebody like you in their corner is helpful too, because we all need to check in with ourselves and check in with somebody else and kind of make sure we're calibrating along the way.
Yeah, and it could be something as simple as like a value not aligning. If you're caught up in a 9-to-5 or a brick and mortar gig, and what you really want to do is be a travel writer and like traveling the world and being on your laptop on a beach somewhere, then you got to design a life that's aligned with your values. You have to design your business so it's aligned with your values as well. So having those tools is a great starting point. It's really the foundation for everything.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And I appreciate you being on the podcast. And before we hop off, tell us where we can learn more about you and kind of follow along.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Mike. It's been a pleasure. You can go to 6weekstohappy.com, or you can go to the lifeblogquiz.com. You can take the quiz, you can get the book, you can find out more about me and our coaches and what we do. And it's been extraordinary. Even training my team of coaches was an extraordinary journey, because sometimes you work with a coach for an hour and it's game changing. Like, within 2 or 3 weeks, their entire life flips around just from one tiny little thing that they weren't aware of. So, I'm the biggest fan of coaching, and, coming up in my career as a management consultant, we always had mentors. It was just like part of our structured way of developing professionally. And so many people go without that. Don't go without a coach. It's the best thing you can do for yourself. Get a guideline, get a gauge for how you're doing, and hire someone to show you the ropes and to get you on the right track. All you have to do is, take action. It's small changes, and it just takes as little as 10 minutes a day, but they can be life-shifting.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And for what it's worth, I agree. I've had a coach since Jump Street, and I've had multiple coaches and people that they're not necessarily writing the rules or telling me what to do, but there's somebody I can springboard ideas off of. And like you said, just every once in a while, there's a nugget of gold there that you needed to hear it from somebody else.
I had one client first came to me and said, I don't know, she was building to figure out how to sell herself as a coach. And I thought, I know you're training. You're actually trained as an Olympic athlete, as a coach yourself. Within 3 weeks of us working together, all of a sudden she was invited on a private jet to go to a different city to be on national TV to talk about her expertise in the field. And I thought, all it took was one little shift, and like this amazing opportunity popped into your lap. And that's sometimes all it takes. So yeah, absolutely. Don't wait.
Yeah.
There's no point in just surviving through your life and having a life or a business that's not making you happy, that's not exciting you every day. If you're not waking up and excited by your day, then you've got to make a change. And, don't wait. Just go to 6weeks.com and start your journey today, for sure.
With that, Zahra Karsan, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
If you'd like to learn more about Cyberdogz, share your thoughts, or even ask a specific question about this episode and or the brand Retro Mindset, contact me directly at mike@cyberdogzmarketing.com.